Someone once asked me, what would happen if you combined one of Terraria's hardest mods with another crazy hard game like Dark Souls? Let me tell you, it was something magical. My story began like all others, at the beginning. And right away, I was faced with the hardest choice I would have to make. What class do I play? Now, for those of you who don't know, base Terraria has a class system comprised of 4 classes, these being Melee, Ranged, Magic, and Summoner. However, the main mod I'm using here, which is called Calamity, adds a new class called Rogue. Now, while all the classes in the base game are pretty self-explanatory, Rogue works a bit different by trading attack speed for massive boosts in attack damage. While you're on a rogue class, you gain a stealth meter, and when you're not attacking, your stealth grows. And when you use a rogue weapon, you gain massively increased damage based on how much stealth you have when you attack. You can even gain special benefits for certain weapons when attacking at full stealth. And because I knew that there were some insane effects you could get later on, like this one. Yeah, this was the class that I chose. Now, early game Terraria is just a bunch of resource gathering, which went a little like this.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was slow as it always is. But that's because it's really only when we start fighting bosses where we notice some major changes thanks to the Dark Souls mod. As you can guess, in base Terraria, you don't have to worry about building into certain stats in order to use weapons. But all that has changed thanks to the Dark Souls mod. Fortunately for me, however, with how many enemies that spawn in Terraria, grinding levels really isn't an issue. The bigger issue is the addition of stamina. In Terraria, you can get certain items that allow you to do a short dash that greatly aids in maneuverability and dodging attacks. With the addition of stamina, however, you only get a limited amount of dodges before you have to wait for your stamina to regenerate, just like Dark Souls. Fortunately for me, this new dodge actually has built-in iframes, which makes it more powerful. Is what I would have said if it actually worked at all. Now, call this a skill issue if you must, but I actually never saw this working my entire playthrough. Oh, and this dash replaces any other dash moves you can get later in the game, so you're stuck with this tiny dash the entire game that doesn't even help you at all. But oh well, if you're gonna make the game harder, then bring it on. After finally defeating King Slime on my 48th attempt. What happened? What happened there? Anyway, after defeating him, I've started flying through the early game. And so we were on to hard mode. But what did that mean for me? Well, I've played my fair share of Calamity, and since I knew the progression so well, that meant one big thing. Efficiency. I knew that there were several bosses I could skip and come back later to, and I also knew that for my build in particular, there was one boss I could fight early that would get me a great weapon. So it wasn't all sunshine and roses through hard mode like it was through pre-hard mode. Turns out this stamina and dash change was kicking my Terrarian butt. I even struggled with the most random boss, the twins. But I kept at it, slowly gaining power as I defeated bosses and upgraded my gear in arenas until I was ready to take on Mars again. Why did I want to kill Mars so early? Well, he drops a weapon called the Auroradical Throw, which is a rogue weapon that fires an infinitely piercing star, which splits into homing stars. Now, with how tough the next few bosses were going to be with my pathetic little dash, I knew I needed something strong. Thankfully, Aris dropped it on the first kill. So I was ready to I was ready to start shredding through hard mode. Wait. I think it's actually illegal for me to go through this next fight without playing the song that goes to it, so, here we go. I was nearing the end of my journey, but the 4 toughest foes lay yet before me. Post-Moonlord Calamity is my absolute jam, so I was pumped to get into it. Now I started off by getting upgrades using the ores that Moonlord spawned after he died. Then I threw myself at the bosses, starting with the Profane Guardians and Providence, who I have fought so many times that I could probably do it blindfolded. I'm not going to, but don't hold me to that. I easily took her out after a few tries. Next up, I was on to the Rune of Ko's bosses. All 3 of these bosses use the same summoning item, but depending on where you use it, you'll get a different boss. These 3 I had also fought many times in the past, so they were no issue. While I may have had no issue with them, the real issue arose with the boss that came after, Devourer of Gods. You see, DOG is so fast and has such a small turning radius, I would need to be able to dodge his attacks at the very last second. But unfortunately, with the dodge I had using the Dark Souls mod, it was not cutting it. So I had to unfortunately turn to using teleport items, which I had not used up until this point in the playthrough. However, as all walls do, DOG eventually fell to me ramming my head into it. So why do I love endgame Calamity so much? Well, put simply, it's because there's almost absolutely no grind. After DOG is defeated, you just have to do a couple events, but only for as long as it takes you to get the items that you want. After that, there's almost no grind the rest of the game. That means that you can go from boss to boss to boss, which is exactly what I did. Now I am going to include almost all the winning attempts of these last few bosses, just because I want you to know how it feels with the whole experience.
stand in my way. Yes, this is the hardship most dire, and one day you will hear what I say. This is my message to my master. This is a fight you
Whew. What a journey, right? If you watched this far into the video, I thank you. Originally, it was only supposed to be around 15 to 20 minutes long, and then I decided to add most of the final bosses, so those ended up taking a lot more time than I expected. But I hope you enjoyed. Seriously. This is by far the biggest project I've ever worked on when it comes to editing. I had to sift through about 20, I think it was around 27 hours of footage, and the editing itself took around 40, so I really hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please feel free to show it. Share it with somebody, I don't know. Do something. And for anyone wondering, I did end up doing Boss Rush, but I didn't want to add that because Boss Rush on its own ended up being almost 20 minutes long. So I obviously didn't want to add that for length reasons. For now, I guess I'll see you in whatever the heck I get up to next. If you have any suggestions for stupid challenges, maybe not in Terraria specifically because it took so long to play, leave them in the comments. But for now, I'll catch you guys in the next one.